And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I am so delighted to welcome tonight #1 internationally best-selling author, Dervla McTiernan, here to give us the inside scoop about her brand new book out tomorrow, The Murder Rule, and some super exciting TV news. Oh, I can't wait to get the scoop. Dervla, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about The Murder Rule.
Oh, thank you for having me, Sara. I'm excited to be here. So The Murder Rule follows the story of Hannah Rokeby, and Hannah is this young, idealistic law student. She joins the Innocence Project on the eve of this huge case. They're trying to save an innocent man from death row. So Hannah's exactly what you'd expect her to be at first glance, really bright and clever, really the kind of girl who wants to change the world and impress her professors and perfect. But she's not that person. You scrape beneath the surface and you find someone very different. Hannah's quite a bit darker. She's definitely got some secrets and she's working to her own agenda.
Ooh, a woman with her secrets, working through her own agenda is my kind of woman. I was hooked from the moment I started reading this when I learned there was a secret diary. I'm a diary keeper. So it's sort of my worst nightmare that someone finds in my journal and reads it. And so I can't wait to talk about all of that and more. But first, I just want to welcome everyone. So we're streaming live as always to 6 destinations across Facebook and YouTube. So no matter where you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. And if you have any questions for Dervla, the incredible #1 best-selling author, about her new book, get them going in the questions. Catch a clue. Welcome to the conversation. She says, "Hi, Sara and Dervla. Hey, Wendy. Always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hey, Robin. Great to have you watching on Facebook as well. Thank you for joining us." So, Dervla, this book, as so many of your books, is racking up amazing praise. Let's get into some of it. So, Karin Slaughter, New York Times bestselling author of many, many books, including pieces of her now a Netflix series, Raves. This is gripping and full of tension with twist after twist. You won't just read The Murder Rule, you will devour it. So I love Karin Slaughter. She was on the show when her last book came out. So this is very high praise indeed. Tell us your secrets as an incredibly accomplished writer in your own right. How do you write a gripping book full of tension with twist after unexpected twist? Give us a peek into your process.
Oh my God, 5,000 drafts is the answer to that question.
Ooh, okay.
And I don't know if I deserve that praise, but I can tell you that when I got it, I was on a Zoom call with my editor in the United States, just as by coincidence, when that blurb arrived from Karin, and she read it out to me over his phone, and I literally got tears in my eyes. I mean, it was just so overwhelming because Karin's a hero to me. I think she's an amazing writer. So to hear that from her just meant the world to me. But how do I write my books? I mean, bit by time, bit at a time, and just keep going. And twists are so important, but they're so important that they're baked in. There's nothing worse than a reader when you read through a book and then something totally shifts and you're kind of going, huh? Really? I don't buy it. You needed to really put in the work and so that people go, oh, of course, that's what you're looking for. The surprise, but almost simultaneous. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, so, totally. And I think you actually bring up some really good points, because I think culturally there's such a reverence for the twist and sort of the cleverness of it, almost to the exclusion of it making sense sometimes.
Yeah.
So I am not that girl. I love a good twist, but I do need it to make sense.
100%.
So tell us, while you're doing those 5,000 twists, 5,000 drafts, so do you plot it all out and then you bake in the twists there, or do you see where the story takes you, then you go back and put them in? I mean, how does it actually work?
It's a bit of both. I mean, sometimes a lot of it I will bake in advance. I mean, I do a lot of outlining and planning of the book, and I always know I want to surprise people. I mean, to me, it's not absolutely essential that a crime novel has a twist. I've read many of my favorites that wouldn't even be remotely in that territory. But this book always felt to me like one that needed to be twisty. And so I had certainly got a plan of a few little things up my sleeve. But one of the ones that meant the most to me in the end, that came to me in the writing. And I just went, oh my God, perfect. That's perfect. And I was having real trouble with something structural, and it just all made it fall into place for me. So that was just organic. It just grew from the story. But some of it is put in. Yeah. And then you go back once you know where you're going to go with that. You're looking back for opportunities to foreshadow it and tweak. Like we can cheat so much as writers because afterwards the reader, if it works really well, it should be really effective for the reader. But of course we've had so many opportunities to perfect it and say, well, I'm going to put it in that sentence but not here, and I'm going to do a little bit there but less here, so that as you read it, it should unfold for the reader without any sense of all that work.
Yes, exactly. You want it to, I think there's almost an inverse relation where the more effortless it seems, the more hard work went in. So Dervla, let me ask you, if that final twist that came to you during the process of the writing revealed itself to you, not through plotting, but through organic revelation, who do you think is writing this book? Do you feel divinely guided? Are they talking to you?
The characters are doing it all. I don't know. I think like I've heard so many other writers talking about this, and I've heard Elizabeth Gilbert talk about the magic of story ideas that can float in the air, and other people talking about feeling like they're excavating a story that already exists. And before I was writing, I would read those things and I would kind of think, really? It doesn't make sense. But there is this weird alchemy, I think, about writing. I don't know if you'd agree, Sarah, but sometimes when I'm writing, you make something that feels so real. You've built these characters up and their connections with each other feel so real. And then you're almost surprised when you discover something and it does feel like it already existed. It's like, well, of course. And it's like you're finding out a secret about them rather than making something up. And I think that's when it's really working. That's when you've put in the work to make real characters who almost self-generate story for you from there.
Oh, I love that. And I love getting into sort of that mystical end of writing, because when you are in what some people call flow, that state of sacred flow, it doesn't always feel like you are at the wheel or at the wheel by yourself. And it's a very mysterious process. So, and I'm very intrigued by that. Leslie, welcome to the conversation. Joining us from Canada, saying hello. That's her signature Canadian hello. Leslie, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for tuning in. So everybody, let us know, and you know how this goes. If you've been here before, this is your time to ask our featured author anything you want. So ask this incredible #1 best-selling author internationally anything you want about her process. Margaret Pinard, welcome to the conversation, joining us live from the Pacific Northwest, saying, I love someone to take the wheel sometimes. Where does one put in a request? So let's pause there, Dervla. How do you get in that state of flow? How do you get into that?
I can give you some hints. It's just so practical and boring, but I always start a writing session with paper and pen. I just feel like there's something about that half hour that gets me out of my head. I think a lot of writers tend towards a little bit of perfectionism or maybe a bit of anxiety, and I certainly do. And yeah, you hands up. And it can put you in that sort of, I'm overthinking it, I'm getting it wrong. Oh, you don't feel the story. So if I sit down with just paper, just think, I might even just be like talking about what I had for breakfast or how I'm feeling that day or the fact that I'm going to be late to pick up the kids later. If I don't, just whatever my worries are, blather them onto the page and then start thinking, what am I writing? Who's going into this scene? What do they know going in? What do they want out of it? Where are they? How do they feel about each other? What's physically there to be seen? What do I want to achieve with it all? And I'll just flow onto the page, even snippets of dialogue, so that by the time I sit down half an hour later with my fingers on the keyboard, all this, any little bit of stress or residual house stuff is done. I'm in the story and I know where I'm going with the scene. And it's just, I always find whenever I get stuck, whenever I run into trouble, it's because I haven't done the early work, the prep work.
Oh, interesting. Now, I know that practice. I read, I think 15 years ago, Julia Cameron's The Way of the Artist. Is that where you got, is that your morning pages practice?
I've heard about morning pages, and I think I read that book before, and I know some writers absolutely swear by it. I don't do a kind of a formal morning pages thing, and I don't have to write that many, but I do think it's connected. I think it's probably very similar. I think it gets you out of your head. That's my theory about morning pages. You get whatever stuff, we build up through the course of the day or the week with life and normal stuff that's there in the way is gone. It's just released. And then you're moving into a more creative space. And it's just, I think it's that bridge between real life and that flow state that you were talking about earlier.
Ooh. I love this. I love this. Margaret would like to know what happens to those morning pages. Yes. Oh my God. Great question. Dervla, do you save them?
Great question, Margaret. They're all in like, I'm very notebook picky, as so many of us are. So I have all these notebooks at home shoved up on the shelf with the name of the book I was writing and all those pages. And if anybody ever reads them, I'd be mortified, because it has they're such a hodgepodge. They're never meant to share. So some of them are beautifully written, considered scene plans, and others are that I have to pick up dog food by 4 o'clock before the shop closes. You know?
Now, Dervla, do you ever put them in the recycling can under some, I don't know, half-filled bottles of vodka? I'm just saying.
Possibly. I mean, possibly stranger things have happened. We better explain that one.
I think we better. Otherwise, some rumors might start to happen. It might start to spark. So, Dervla, this is the story of Hannah Rokeby. As you say, it opens with her heading off to law school, and she's clearly looking for something that doesn't belong to her. Tell us about this, and what made you think about what gave you this idea of this diary, of this whole thing?
Well, did I tell you about the newspaper article I read quite a few years ago?
No.
So I read a newspaper article about a young Irish law student who went to the States for a summer and volunteered for the Innocence Project. And when she came back, she couldn't kind of forget about the case she'd been working. It really stuck with her. So people, I think, are mostly familiar with the Innocence Project. They're kind of a loosely affiliated small groups of lawyers who volunteer for people. Originally, it was prisoners on death row that they believed to be innocent, and then they kind of spread it a bit wider. People who can't afford lawyers of their own. So they're trying to free innocent people from prison. And it's mostly staffed by volunteers, young law students. Some staff lawyers and professors would also do the work. So this Irish law student went and volunteered for the Innocence Project, came home, couldn't let go of the case, kept working it, ultimately found a retired police officer who pointed to her to some hidden evidence. And that evidence ultimately freed a man from prison. So I read this and I thought, wow, this is so inspirational, this incredible young woman. But I didn't feel there was a story there for me because, that story had been told. It was a couple of years later I came across the article again, and I kind of dug into it a bit more. And it turned out that just because of the normal bureaucracy of court processes, it took 5 years after she found the evidence for that case to be heard and for him to be freed, by which point he'd spent 26 years in prison and only had 3 years left to run in his sentence. And that was just a much darker, sadder story for me. And I couldn't understand why that hadn't been reported, that only the brighter tale had been reported, which made me think, okay, maybe that was the editors of the newspapers thought it was more inspirational. But what if, I had no reason to think this, only my own twisted mind, but what if the Innocence Project had this sophisticated PR team and they'd sent out the more inspirational take? And then I thought, if they had, would I blame them? Because they're trying to do something so important in a world that doesn't care. We live in a world that's loud and so busy. We live in a post-truth world. How far do you have to go to be effective? So would they take a step off that perfect path? And if they took one, would they take another? And then would they take another? And where would that lead them? And once I started thinking like that, I thought, ooh, I think I've got a story here. So that set me off down this particular path, and to send Hannah, not as someone coming in as you would expect to really make a difference in the world in the right way, but instead working to her own agenda to keep this man ultimately in prison.
That is interesting. It's I've heard about the Innocence Project many years ago, and have, every once in a while you'll hear, they free innocent person, and you're sucked into that story. So the idea of thinking of one of those selfless volunteer people working so hard and not getting paid, but not there for the sole purpose of freeing the innocent is a tasty idea, Dervla. So very, very cool. Don Winslow, the New York Times bestselling author of The Force and the Border, also raving about this book, saying Dervla McTiernan has become one of my favorite writers. And if you read the murder rule, she will quickly become one of yours. This book is diabolically clever, highly compelling, and deeply moving. So high praise there again earned from the incredible Don Winslow. Now, Dervla, let's talk about this one. So I think I was so intrigued by this one because I liked his use of the word diabolically clever. So how does one become diabolically clever? How do you think of these? I would never think of this idea. So I'm genuflecting and I'm in awe.
Thank you. I don't know. It just, it's like so many things. I think whenever you talk to a writer about where the idea comes from, it's always a combination of things that hit together and clash and become something more. And for me, it was, the idea of, I couldn't let go of the story of a young student. I loved the idea of a young student doing this work, particularly because when I was a young law student, I would have been a million miles from this. I was nowhere near able to do this kind of work and be brave enough for it. But then until I got the idea of sort of inverting it and twisting it upside down, I didn't really know where to go with it. In terms of making it clever, like, it's just the drafts. It's honestly writing multiple drafts where you just don't, the perfectionism of sort of saying, this isn't there yet, this isn't there yet. I mean, the hardest thing for me in this book was writing Laura's diary entries, the diary entries for Hannah's mum, because they needed to work on a lot of different levels. And I was also running the risk of, when you read a book with dual timelines or with multiple points of view and you fall in love with one of them and you have no interest in the others and you're just turning those pages to get back to the thing you want to read as fast as you can. I was afraid that would happen. And it certainly did happen to me in the earlier drafts. I mean, I was reading those diary entries back going, this is not doing it. I can feel the difference, the gap between the Hannah bits, so I had to keep working it.
Interesting. I know exactly what you mean when you do have an affinity for a certain character and you're kind of like going a little faster to get back to the person you love the most. That did not happen for me for this book. I was equally intrigued and especially as a diary keeper. How many other people keep diaries? Let us know in the comments. Am I the only one here, or who else does that? In fact, I have a pact with my college roommate who I knew we were going to be friends because she showed up with the freshman year and she was writing in her diary. And we have a pact that she said, if anything ever happens to her, she wants me to drive to Philadelphia and burn all her diaries before her husband or her family can read them, which I have agreed to do. Right. Anyone else have have a diary pact? Are you a diary keeper, Dervla?
I kept one as a very young girl, like in my teens, and I mean, I found them later. I was so mortified. Like, you think you're writing something really amazing and meaningful, and it's just, I fancy this guy. I fought with my friend, basically. Multiplied by 5,000. Yes. I mean, long bins, thankfully. So the closest thing I have to a diary now is my writing notebooks, which are just, a combination of writing thoughts and whatever is going on that day.
Yeah, exactly. Wendy says she is too afraid to keep a journal. She would never want someone to find them. Exactly. I think that is a fear. So when you're reading Hannah's mom's diary, Lara's diary, and of course, all of us who have that fear are like, oh God, it would be so like horrifying if so, if someone were ever to find
no one ever will. I mean, they're not intended to be read, right? I mean, they're just for you. So it's the worst. But Hannah found this diary when she was 15. Yeah. And it was written when her mum was in her early 20s as like this young person working just to survive in Bar Harbor as a chambermaid, really just hanging on, and it's very heightened. So you can kind of imagine the impact that would have on Hannah when she was so young.
Exactly. Leslie's saying, I have a jot note or a bullet journal I keep. Okay. So I think those are more of like a like a goal setting. So maybe Leslie, would that be slightly less mortifying for you if somebody read this?
I'm in awe, Leslie, because those things are beautiful. I bought a bullet journal and I, tried to do the thing. I'm just not creative enough. Have you seen them on YouTube? They're amazing. Some of the people who do those things, they're so beautiful, but I can't do it. I can't pull it off.
Dervla Sara Pinborough, who was on the show just a few weeks ago when her new book came out, also raving about your book. She says this is, quote, the best legal thriller I have read in years. Congratulations on that. She said, great writing, a gripping plot, intriguing characters. I read it in 2 sittings. Dervla, has a new fan. Congratulations on that amazing rave review. Now, Dervla, I always ask everyone to give us the inside scoop, to give us a secret. I understand you have some exciting TV news. Tell us the scoop.
Yes, FX have optioned The Murder Rule. They're making it into a limited series, and it's already moving forward. There are already writers involved, and it's very exciting. Very, very
Oh
exciting.
my gosh, congratulations. So tell us everything you know about it. When's it going to come
Oh
out?
my
Anybody
gosh, I don't know.
know?
My agent just rang me and told me that FX wanted it, and he was very happy, and I was very happy because they have such a great reputation for premium drama. And then he asked me to send him my notes and things in the background to the story. So work I had done on the characters, and that doesn't make it into the book, but that I know about the characters and what I feel is the most important, parts of the story. And then I got to see the notes from the writers' meeting about their take and their view about how they would like to shift things and keep things, and how they saw the characters, which was amazing because you're seeing other creative minds come in and look at your stuff, and how they take it and where they want to take it is so interesting. So I so enjoyed it, and I'm just thrilled. I don't know when it will make it to the screen, but it does seem to be moving forward pretty quickly, so that's pretty exciting.
Was it hard for you to pick the, quote, most important scenes? Were you like, everything is so pivotal? Or were you able to say, no, here are the, how many were there? Was it, 50 or
Well, I
how did you
suppose
do
it was
that?
more, I probably misspoke a little bit. It wasn't so much about scenes as it was about, what elements of the story are most important, like from a
Okay,
themic sort of point of view.
okay,
So,
okay.
but yeah, you're right. If they'd asked me themes, I would have been struggling. Or scenes, I would have been like, yeah, maybe all of them. I don't know.
Every single one, page
Yes.
1, line 1, word 1
Yeah.
through
All
all of
gold.
them.
All gold. Cut nothing.
Oh my gosh. Dervla, how long did it take you to write this book, start to finish, soup to nuts?
Oh, geez. I would say over well, on and off, almost 2 years, which is really slow for me because usually I'm done in a year, including, editing. Um, I think it was a bit about COVID, maybe. I mean, even though in Western
Yeah.
Australia, COVID had very little impact on us, other than the fact that we couldn't travel because our state premier basically closed the borders, which is something that probably could only be done in Western Australia, which is quite remote. So we had no COVID for most of the pandemic until quite recently. So day-to-day life went on, but weirdly, it seemed to impact us. I mean, not weirdly, look, none of us could travel and see family. It was obviously impacting day-to-day life in other ways, and it was this thing hanging over us all. And it
Mm.
certainly seemed to impact me. I was more distracted than usual, and there were a few other things going on. Plus, it was just a tough book to be really satisfied with. I really wanted to be a better writer. With each book, I always want to be a better writer. I wanted to make it the best book I could. So I just kind of kept going back, and it took me a while to let go of this one. But I got there in the end.
Do you feel that extra year of seasoning, of marination, of ripening yielded your best book yet? Or do you love them all equally?
I hope this is my best book yet. I really do. I mean, I really do, because I want to be a better writer. I'm so inspired by some of the writers I read, and the experience they give me as a reader. And I want to write those books. So I want to make it better. I feel like this book is a step up. I definitely think it's a better book than it would have been had I gone earlier, because I mean, the Lara chapters, I have at least 3 versions of those completely finished, like pretty much edited, done, that are totally different scenes, different scenarios, different outcomes. And
Wow.
it was only in the 3rd complete rewrite that it started to come to life properly and have its own kind of resonance to it, the way the Hannah chapters already had. So I'm glad I waited for that to happen and then polish that up, rather than trying to make the earlier drafts work when they just weren't working. Now, I had obviously help from my editors with that, but it made all the difference.
Wow, that is so interesting to think of that. So 2 questions. Number 1, how has Lara as a character evolved for you? And number 2, as someone who like me, like all of us is trying to be a better writer, what's one thing that you're really working on in your craft?
Well, with Laura, I think my biggest challenge was all the way through, I didn't know where exactly I wanted her to land as a character. And I can't say too much without giving away massive spoilers, but I didn't know if I wanted her to be all good, all bad, or something in between. I think I wanted her to be everything, and that isn't possible. And until I made a decision about who she really was, I was riding myself around in circles. So I figured that out, and then things started to move forward. In terms of what I want to do better, gosh, there's so many things. I think it's the micro stuff that adds up to the macro experience. It's every little choice we make. Because Sarah, like when we're writing, you're going through paragraph by paragraph, word by word, line by line, trying to feel how it feels to you as a reader and tweaking those
Yes.
small changes that make
Yes.
the difference. I remember the first time I was copy edited ever. And the copy editor is pointing out that you've used the word front twice within 2 paragraphs, and that might
Yeah.
be a little bit too close. And you're like, really? But
Yes.
actually, it does affect the reader's experience. It shouldn't,
Yeah.
but it does. It's just the way our brains work. There's certain, words that are uncommon you cannot use frequently because they just throw you out of the book. So I think I'm constantly looking for things. What's throwing you out of the story, or what's making the story come to life a bit more? And that's down to
Mm.
the decision of like how you finish a paragraph, how you start the next one, how what's in like every scene in this book had to earn its place. If it wasn't working hard, it doesn't belong there. And I think that's what I'm trying to do. Just be a lot more ruthless with my choices. If the
Mm.
scene's not working on at least 2 levels, if it's not achieving 2 or 3 things, off it goes. It doesn't
Ooh.
survive.
Were you less ruthless earlier in your career, would you say?
Yes.
What do you
Yes,
think?
because you're learning, and because the words are precious. Now, I was always a bit ruthless. I mean, I wrote 30,000 words of The Ruin, and my first book, my first 30,000 words, and I scrapped them and started again. And I've always been willing to do that. I mean, always to send it to the cutting room floor. I think the difference is now the standard that the words and the book, the scenes have to meet to survive is higher than it was earlier.
Fascinating. Now, Dervla, your work is being compared to Tana French, who I absolutely love. Her Irish Murder Squad series, fabulous.
Mm.
And Ruth Ware, among many, many others. Who are some of your literary heroes? Who are you working toward? Whose writing do you admire?
Well, you just named two of them. Genuinely, I mean, I think I've loved Tana French since her very first book. I mean, that twist in her first novel was like one of those ones that just I didn't see coming at all. And her writing is so good. And Ruth Ware's books, they're just a treat. Like I look forward to them hitting the bookshelves. And she's one of those writers I go to the bookshop for every time.
Yes.
Right? Anthony
Yeah.
Horowitz, I'm really enjoying his Magpie Murders series. It's just so much fun to read.
Oh my God, I love Anthony.
Right? They're brilliant. This book within a book thing. And Stephen King, I mean, I know everybody loves Stephen King, but I'm just another one of his legion of fans because the quality of his writing, the surprise of it, the creativity of it. And when he kind of branched into sort of semi-crime fiction with the Bill Hodges books and The Outsider, like I've loved those. I would love him to write more of those because I could read them forever.
I totally agree. I love all of those as well. Anthony Horowitz I've hosted him twice. I've hosted Ruth Ware 2 or 3 times as well. And I love both of those. Ruth is absolutely the author. I will go to the store, pre-order, get that in hardcover.
Yep.
I have
Yep.
to have it. I love Anthony, and they're such different writers, but I love Anthony Horowitz's very dry, very British sense of humor. He is so freaking funny. Oh my God.
Really?
Hard to be funny, and he is just utterly delightful. And I love how he puts himself in there. So you're reading about, I don't know if you read his latest
So
Line to
meta,
Go.
isn't it?
There's this one scene where he's in with his editors and agents, and they're saying, "You better not put this scene in the book." And he's like, "Of course not," but he has.
Oh, he's brilliant. I've heard him talk. Like I've heard him talk about his. I haven't met him, but I've heard him talk about his writing. He just seems like one of those absolute genius writers to me. I mean, he seems to be able to turn his hand to anything, and he's so productive. He would put you
Yes.
to shame.
Yes, and he has a new 007 James Bond book coming out this spring, which I'm very excited about. I've never read a James Bond book before, so I'm
No.
excited for that. Liz Nugent is another one who is just raving about this book. She said, I don't think it's an exaggeration to compare Dervla, your book, to Grisham at his best. The Murder Rule is utterly absorbing, entertaining, and intriguing. I thoroughly enjoyed it. What do you think of that? Do you consider yourself like in that legal, sort of John Grisham?
Oh, I thought you were going to say in that category, and I was going to go, no, I do not consider myself as good as John Grisham. Yeah, I think it kind of falls in there. I mean, I think there's very little courtroom in this, but there is a little bit at the very end. So
Ooh,
I wanted it to be more action than courtroom scenes. So definitely we have more out and about with the students investigating and all of that, and Hannah's personal drama kind of unfolding. But we have got a little bit of courtroom drama at the end, which was fun to write because I haven't written those scenes before. And you can run with it, you know. I mean, I am a lawyer. I didn't do criminal work, but I was a lawyer for a long time. But writing it in a novel is very different to reality because you get to cut out all the boring bits. You know, there's no filing of paperwork. There's no queuing up at the registrar's office. It's just get in for the good stuff and get back out again.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to remind you guys, this book is not even out yet. It is out tomorrow. So Dervla is joining us for this very special pre-launch event. So I'm going to drop the link in the comments right here. It is. So click over, support our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore, Murder by the Book. And the good folks at the store will mail it out to you tomorrow so that you too can, as Karin Slaughter said, devour this book. I am 3/4 of the way through and I will have this book done by midnight. It's so good. So here's the link. Go grab your copy. And then, as always, come join us in Mystery and Thriller Mavens, where all the good tea is spilled, as the cool kids say, where we continue the conversation. We chat all things mysteries and thrillers. We do a ton of book giveaways. So I'm going to put the link in there as well. So grab your copy, come join the group. We'll continue the conversation in there as well. Dervla, thank you so much for coming on and giving us all of the scoop about the FX series. Everybody stay tuned for that. All of these amazing words of praise from Don Winslow, Karin Slaughter, Sara Pinbarrow. I could go on and on. I've popped as many as I can in the comments so everyone can. I love to read praise. It's like when you go to movies early and you watch the previews and you have your popcorn. It's so good.
Yeah.
I like to go really early, sit center, get my popcorn, watch the previews. So here's all the previews for you of Dervla's incredible book, The Murder Rule, out tomorrow, y'all. So grab that copy, hit that pre-order button, and immerse yourself in the fabulous world of Hannah and her mom, Lara. Find out what's going on with this Innocence Project, the diary, so much more is in the pages of this book. Dervla, congratulations. I can't wait to see it on the screen. I know who I'm picturing as Hannah, so I can't wait to see who is cast. And please come back and join us next time your next book is out. We'd love to have you back.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been lovely to talk to you today. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Dervla. All right, everybody, I'll see you at the top of the hour with Victoria Helen Stone. Stay tuned.